Hey guys, it's Movie Buff Beth or Bethany back again with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I watched in the month of April. Now some quick matters of business before I get into this. It has been about a year since I started doing these videos, and while I really do enjoy them, at times they are a bit of a labor of love. It takes a lot of time and energy to take all of these movies off the shelves and sit down and spend at least an hour talking about them. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of work, but it does kind of end up being a bit of a labor of love for me. So I wanted to ask you guys a question about whether or not you guys want me to continue doing these videos, and if so, do you really prefer this format where I sit down and talk for about an hour, sometimes more than that, about everything that I watched in the month of April? Do you like that format, or would you rather I split them up into kind of like weekly watches, or I do it like twice a month, kind of split the month in half? Or would you rather I talk about maybe like my top 10 or 20 watches of the month rather than talking about everything that I watched? I don't rank my overall watches, but I do rank my first time watches, so I could just do that. I don't know, I'm just kind of at a little bit of a loss. I'm happy to continue doing them if you guys enjoy them and if you guys find value in them, or if you would find value in kind of a different format for this type of video. I'm just not really sure, because again, these are a lot of work. I will continue to do them this way if this is what, you know, most everyone prefers, because it is kind of nice to sit down and kind of reflect on everything that I watched in the month. But you know, with how much I watch in one month, sometimes it's difficult to even remember back to the first of the month and remember a lot of details about the things that I've watched. So there's kind of that issue as well. But again, I will continue to do them if that's what you guys would prefer. But please sound off below. Let me know your opinion on these videos, if you enjoy them, if you would rather I just scrap the idea altogether. Just give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And with all of that said, I'll just go ahead and dive into what I watched in the month of April. So the first thing I watched was actually on HBO Max. It is available on Blu-ray and I definitely need to pick it up. And that is Best in Show from 2000, directed by Christopher Guest. First of all, I have to mention HBO Max is probably my favorite streaming service at the moment. They have a great array of catalog titles, lots of cool stuff on there, like Criterion titles, like some Warner Archive stuff, all kinds of really cool films on there. So if you guys aren't signed up for HBO Max, I would definitely recommend checking into it, because it's a pretty solid streaming service with a great selection of films. Little side note there, but yeah, I really do enjoy HBO Max. Anyways, Best in Show, like I said, is directed by Christopher Guest. This was the first film that I had seen directed by him, and I really enjoyed it. I love the mockumentary style of it. I love the performances. Everybody was so funny in it, especially Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy. I think they were just hilarious together, especially after having binged Schitt's Creek last year. It was just really fun to see them together. After watching this film, I had to seek out Christopher Guest's other films, and I will talk a little bit about that later in the video. I really enjoyed Best in Show. The comedy really clicked for me. It just worked really well. I laughed the whole time. One of my favorite comedies that I've seen for sure, and like I said, I have to pick up that Blu-ray soon, but this one I would give 4.5 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. The next film I watched came out in 1986. This is a rewatch of April Fool's Day. You have to watch either this or Slaughter High on April Fool's Day every year, kind of a tradition of mine. Last year I watched Slaughter High, so I figured this is the perfect opportunity to throw on my Scream Factory disc of April Fool's Day, and I had a lot of fun with it, same as when I watched it the first time. It has a lot of plot twists and it does not go the direction that you would expect, and it's a very unconventional slasher, and I really appreciate that about it. I had never watched the Scream Factory transfer, which I heard it's not really a new transfer or anything, so I went into it with kind of low expectations, but overall I thought that the picture quality was pretty good. I couldn't complain about it too much, honestly. It looked HD quality and it looked just fine to me. Sure, they could have had some restoration work, but overall I'm just happy to have it on Blu-ray. And again, this is a really fun, unconventional slasher, and I would give it 3.5 out of 5. And there's a little bit closer look at that artwork if you wanted to see it there. Really nice release from Scream Factory. And then of course you also have like the original artwork on the inside, so that's awesome. The next film I watched was on HBO Max, and that is 1985's Desperately Seeking Susan. This film stars Madonna and Rosanna Arquette, in which Rosanna Arquette plays kind of a bored housewife who becomes fascinated with this character Susan, played by Madonna, who she only knows through a collection of newspaper ads that she's seen, and she just becomes very obsessed and fascinated with her. And in a series of events, Rosanna Arquette's character Roberta becomes mistaken in for Susan and kind of takes on her life in certain ways. This was just like a quintessential 80s movie for me. I really enjoyed it. Of course, starring Madonna, you've got some great Madonna tunes in there. You got Into the Groove, which is one of my favorite Madonna songs actually, so I was really excited to hear that. But yeah, again, it's just like quintessential 80s. If you love 80s films, I can't see why you would dislike this one. It's just so much fun. Really great performances from Madonna and Rosanna Arquette. Madonna is just adorable in this film, as well as Rosanna Arquette actually. So yeah, I definitely would recommend this one. I would give this one a 4 out of 5. In case you couldn't tell, I was kind of in an 80s mood towards the beginning of April. The next thing I watched was 1984's Electric Dreams. This Blu-ray is from the UK. It's put out by Second Sight if you guys are interested in it. This is another one that just has that quintessential 80s feel. There were so many movies in the 80s where we were just terrified of what technology could become, and in a lot of ways we were kind of correct. Technology did take over our lives in certain ways, and this was just one of many films to address this issue. And while it's pretty cheesy, it's actually a lot of fun. The main character in this film, Miles, purchases this new computer, and one night he accidentally spills some wine on it, and for some reason that makes this computer become sentient. And very quickly Edgar, the computer, starts to take over Miles's life. And yeah, this was just a really entertaining, fun 80s film with an awesome 80s soundtrack. I just had a ton of fun with this one. This one I would give a 4 out of 5. Next up, from 1987, I watched With Nail and I. This is a Arrow release from the UK. It is still in the plastic. I watched this on HBO Max, and after watching it, I had to grab this from the recent Arrow Easter Carnage sale. Really enjoyed this film. I really like the dynamic between the two main characters, and Richard E. Grant is just a fantastic actor. I've actually only seen him in a couple of things, but he was really good in this one, and overall just really love this film. I give it a 4 out of 5. Got a few more 80s films to get through here. Next up, from 1986, we have Thrashin'. This stars Josh Brolin. This is the Olive Films release. Another one that has that really quintessential 80s feel. If you like movies like Rad or Gleaming the Cube, I think you'll enjoy this one. A nice little skateboarding movie. Yeah, Josh Brolin was really cute in it. You can kind of see him on the back there. But yeah, definitely had fun with this. Not something to take too seriously, but a fun little coming-of-age 80s flick. I would give this 3.5 out of 5. Now, these next few watches are what we watched for Easter Sunday. This is a much overdue first-time watch for me. From 1988, we have Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. I've wanted to see this for years and figured this year on Easter was the perfect opportunity to do so. This stars Willem Dafoe, who plays Christ, and this film is less of a faith-based adaptation of the Gospels and more of a adaptation of Christ if he were just this person who was really struggling with the idea of being like the chosen one, being God's chosen son to lead his people on earth. And I really liked that approach to it. It was very different than any Christ-based film I had seen in the past. Willem Dafoe was absolutely fantastic in this role, as well as all of the supporting characters. They were all really good. This film comes in at 163 minutes, so it's a pretty long watch, but honestly it flew by. This is a really engaging, interesting film that I definitely enjoyed. And when I finished watching it, I sat down and kind of tried to think what I would rate it, and I honestly couldn't really think of any flaws. So overall, I would give this a 5 out of 5. This was just a fantastic film, and I'm so glad I finally watched it. Definitely one of Martin Scorsese's best, and it's not talked about nearly enough. So yeah, definitely enjoyed The Last Temptation of Christ. We wanted to lighten things up a bit on Easter, so the next thing we watched from 1988, we have Critters 2, The Main Course. I have seen the first Critters. It's been quite a while, but I figured I was okay to sit down and watch the second one, and not having recently viewed the first one, and I was right. But this one was a lot of fun. Definitely a perfect Easter watch. This comes from the Scream Factory Critters box set, but overall really enjoyed this film. It's a ton of fun, very cheesy, exactly what you would expect out of a Critters film. I give this a 3.5 out of 5. And the last thing we watched for Easter is a film from 1956, and that is The Ten Commandments. This is a film I've wanted to watch on Easter for many years actually, and I finally sat down to do it. I've seen bits and pieces of this film over the years on TV because they play it every year on Easter, but this is the first time I actually sat down and watched it all the way through. I wouldn't say this is one that I'm going to revisit often, but for this one watch, I really did enjoy it. It looked incredible on 4K. Just a great epic film starring Charlton Heston from Cecil B. DeMille. overall really enjoyed it. I give it 4 out of 5. Now, something I've been participating in for a few years on Instagram now is called the 70s Decade of Horror. And basically over 10 days you watch a film from each year of the 1970s, and of course it has to be a horror film. This is something that I really enjoy because I love 70s horror, and having 10 days dedicated to watching pretty much nothing but that is one of my favorite things. So a bunch of the next watches are going to be from the 1970s, and they are going to be horror films. So my choice for 1970 is a film released by Kino Lorber, and it is called The House That Would Not Die. Now, admittedly, my main reason for picking this one was the runtime. It's only 74 minutes. It was pretty late at night, and I had almost completely forgotten to watch a film from 1970, so I picked this one. It stars Barbara Stanwyck in a much older role. Of course, it's from 1970. She was very good in this. It was kind of a basic haunted house type story. It didn't have a lot to it that really made it stand out for me. Overall, I give it 3 out of 5. It was good for one watch. Not sure when I will revisit this one though. Next up, from 1971, I watched The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. This is a film I've wanted to see for quite a few years. This is directed by Sergio Martino, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite Italian directors. This is a great giallo film. Really enjoyed this. Has a lot of really cool psychological elements in it. It kind of just depicts a tormented woman going through a lot of really difficult things. Edwidge Fenwick, I believe is how you say her name. She's in this, and she's fantastic in this film. Overall, really enjoyed this one. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Just a great giallo film, and an awesome release from Severin. I love that cover art there. And another watch from 1971, we have Daughters of Darkness. This is the 4K release from Blue Underground. It's a beautiful lenticular slipcover there. Looks awesome. I was really excited to finally check this one out. I have owned the Blu-ray for a few years, but for one reason or another hadn't checked it out yet. So when the 4K came out and I picked it up, I knew I had to give it a watch. This was a great film, really cool vampire flick. The performances were top-notch. Overall, I give this a 4 out of 5. Definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a cool, atmospheric 70s vampire film. Although this next film was released in 1972, it is not a part of my 70s decade of horror watches. It's just a film I wanted to check out from the 70s, and it just so happened to fall during this week. And it's a film starring Gene Hackman called Cisco Pike. This is put out by Indicator, a UK label that I highly recommend. They do some great work. Overall, really enjoyed this film. Kind of a cool character study. Definitely had that really 70s feel. If you guys have seen this, you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Gene Hackman, Karen Black, Chris Christopherson is the main character. It actually says introducing him in his first film. And then you also have Harry Dean Stanton in this film, and I really love him. He's one of my favorite character actors. Overall, I really enjoyed this film, and this is a fantastic release from Indicator. I mean, just look at the special features on there. But yeah, Cisco Pike, I give 4 out of 5. Next up, from 1993, I checked out Night Owl. This is a release from Vinegar Syndrome. This was a really cool, atmospheric vampire flick. Definitely reminded me of The Addiction. Has that really gritty nighttime feel to it. This is shot in black and white. You could tell that it was very low budget, but it kind of works for the subject matter. But again, I really did enjoy this one. Really creepy, eerie film that I give probably 3.5 out of 5 too. And a beautiful slipcover from Vinegar Syndrome as always. The next two watches I'll show together. From 1972, I watched The Night Stalker, and from 1973, I watched The Night Strangler. These are two I'd always heard really good things about, and a lot of people have recommended them to me over the years, and I'm glad I finally checked them out. Although they're not as heavy on the horror elements, they are very cool 70s flicks. Great performance from Darren McGavin, who you may know as the father from A Christmas Story, but it was really fun seeing him in something else. And I think I've mentioned this on the channel before, but I really love films set in Las Vegas, so this was really cool to see. And then this is set in Seattle, which is one of my other favorite cities in America, so really cool crime films that I thoroughly enjoyed. Overall, I would say I like this one a little bit more. I'd probably give The Night Stalker a 4 out of 5 and The Night Strangler a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, from 1973, I checked out The Baby from Arrow Video. This is a really wacky, out there film. If you guys have seen it, I'm sure you guys know why. I'm not going to say too much about the plot because I don't want to give anything away. I definitely enjoyed it, but again, it's a very strange film. I'd give this a 3.5 out of 5. And really beautiful artwork from Arrow Video. Next, I checked out a 2018 film on Shudder with Andrew, and that is The Wolf House. This is an animated film that he's been wanting to check out, so I agreed to watch it with him. It was very strange, probably the most unique animation style I've ever seen in a film. At the end, I was pretty much like, what the fuck did I just watch? But for some reason, I just couldn't help but give it 4 stars. I really did enjoy it, even though it kind of like blew my mind and confused me the whole way through. So yeah, I really did enjoy it. This next film I was really excited to finally knock off my watch list, and that is 1973's The Wicker Man. Ever since seeing Midsommar and loving it so much, everybody's been saying, well, you need to watch The Wicker Man. This is a great folk horror film that you could definitely compare to Midsommar, and I definitely saw the similarities between the two. Overall, I think I like Midsommar a little bit more, but I really did connect with this film, really enjoyed it. Christopher Lee is in this as well. He's fantastic, one of the all-time greats, so it's always really fun seeing him in something, but overall, I give this 4.5 out of 5. This is a fantastic horror film. Next up, from 1974, I checked out Phase 4. This is the UK release from 101 Films. This is kind of a sci-fi-esque horror film. It's definitely a slow burn, so you have to be prepared for that, but it was very different. I hadn't really seen anything like it before, so for that reason, I definitely enjoyed it. Overall, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, from 1975, I checked out The Devil's Reign. This is a release from Severin. It has a really cool looking slipcover here. I have to show this to you guys. I've always really enjoyed demonic devil worship films, and this one was no exception. It was very creepy, very eerie, had some great performances. Overall, I give this a 4 out of 5. And then there's the alternate artwork on there, which is what you'll get if you buy this now. The slipcover, I believe, is long sold out, unfortunately, but yeah, really enjoyed this one. Next up, I watched 1976's Burnt Offerings. This is another one that's kind of been recommended to me left and right over the years, and I'm really glad I finally sat down and watched this one. Man, this film was fantastic. It blew me away, even going in with somewhat high expectations from all of the recommendations I've received over the years. I was still really impressed by it. This stars Karen Black, Oliver Reed, and Betty Davis. Just an all-star cast. I really love all 3 of them. They were all fantastic. This film definitely did get under my skin a little bit. I'm not usually too frightened by films from like the 70s and 80s, but this one was really creepy. It had a great atmosphere to it. The house was creepy. The story was really engaging. Definitely one of my favorite horror films that I've seen in recent memory. I would give this a 4.5 out of 5 for sure. Next up, from 1977, I checked out Prey. This is a release from Vinegar Syndrome, another one with a gorgeous slipcover. This is a really interesting film, very out there, has some sci-fi elements to it. It's not one I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy. If you are into a lot of other releases from Vinegar Syndrome, I think that you would probably definitely enjoy this one, but it's very sleazy, kind of a psychosexual sci-fi horror film. Overall, I really did enjoy it, but again, it's not going to be for everyone. I give this 3.5 out of 5. Decided to squeeze in another movie from 1977, and I checked out Cathys Curse. This one's put out by Severin Films. Really happy I got through a lot of label watches this last month. This was not a great film by any means. It definitely had some redeeming qualities, but overall it just felt kind of rip-off-ish. It felt a little bit kind of like The Omen or The Exorcist, but not nearly as good as either of those films. Definitely not one of my favorite evil killer kid films, but again, I did enjoy it. I had an alright time with it. Overall, I give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, from 1976, I checked out Network, directed by Sidney Lumet. I again have to thank my friend Chase Wilson for sending this one my way. This was a huge blind spot for me, and I'm really glad that I finally checked this out. This was a fantastic film. I can see why so many people speak so highly of it, because it was wonderful. The performances were so good. We got Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch, and Robert Duvall, all of which are really great. Peter Finch was definitely the highlight of the film though. I mean, of course, he just has an iconic performance in this. Overall, really enjoyed this. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Next up, from 1978, I checked out I Spit on Your Grave. Surprisingly, I had never seen this one before. Obviously, I've heard a ton of things about it over the years. Not necessarily good things, but I have heard a lot about it. It's definitely an interesting watch. It's pretty shocking, and there's a lot of really disturbing footage in there, of course, like with a rape scene, several rape scenes actually. Overall, I thought it was just an alright revenge film. It definitely doesn't deserve all of the attention that it gets, honestly. It's just a controversial film. Overall, I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5. And this is a release from Ronin Flicks from their I Spit on Your Grave box set. So if you guys are interested in picking that up, you could definitely check out roninflix.com and pick that up. So yeah, I Spit on Your Grave. And then to wrap things up for 70s Decade of Horror, I checked out 1979's The Driller Killer. This is directed by Abel Ferrara, a director that I've really come to enjoy. This is another one that I heard a lot about over the years. It's a very controversial film, or at least it was when it came out. It was like a video nasties title. This is the Arrow video release. This is the Steelbook edition, and it's a really nice Steelbook. I really do like it. This was a very sleazy, gritty film. I'm still not entirely sure what I thought of it. It's a very slow burn. It doesn't really know what it's doing or where it's going. It has a lot of violence, a lot of gore. I did enjoy it. I think that this is definitely one that I need to watch again to really fully decide how I feel about it. Overall, I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5. And yet another HBO Max watch, and that's 1980's Private Benjamin, of course starring the great Goldie Hawn. I'm a huge Goldie Hawn fan. I've loved her in pretty much everything I've seen her in. She's wonderful, and this film is no exception. It's a really charming, fun 80s flick, and if you guys have never seen it, I definitely recommend it. I give it a 4 out of 5. Had a ton of fun with Private Benjamin. Next up from 2021, this is a rewatch. I've talked about this film a few times on the channel now, and that is Barbie Star, Go to Vista Del Mar. This is a really fun movie, really wacky, over-the-top performances from our two leads, Kristen Wiig and Annie Mamulo, I believe is how you say her name. Jamie Dornan's probably the highlight of the film, though. He's so fucking funny in this film. I love it. This is the Target exclusive lenticular edition. Really happy to have that in the collection. You guys know I love this movie. It's so much fun, over the top, silly humor that I really connected with, and I could definitely see myself watching this film many times in the future. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Next up from 1988, I checked out Spellcaster. This is the VSA release from Vinegar Syndrome. This was a really fun film. It had some really cool special effects. It's kind of meta in certain ways. I really enjoyed it. It's not a great film, not anything I would write home about, but I definitely had a fun time with it. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. And some really cool artwork from Vinegar Syndrome. As always, love these VSA releases. Next up, I checked out 1982's The New York Ripper. This is a Fulci film that I've been wanting to see for many years, and for one reason or another, I hadn't gotten to it, but I had to check it out on 4K, and I'm really glad I did. This is definitely one of the sleazier Fulci films I've seen, but it was very enjoyable, very gory. Had a lot of fun with it. I give it a 4 out of 5. Next up from 1972, I checked out What's Up Doc, starring Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. This is a Peter Bogdanovich film, I believe is how you say his name. This has been recommended to me by a few people over the years, and I'm really glad I finally checked it out. This is a really quirky, wacky comedy film where pretty much everything goes wrong, but it's just so funny and enjoyable to watch. Barbara Streisand was adorable. Ryan O'Neal was great. There's just nothing to dislike about this film. It's so much fun. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Loved it. Next up from 1996, directed by Christopher Guest, I checked out Waiting for Guffman. This is the Warner Archive Collection release. Again, after seeing Best in Show, I had to see some of his other films. Still need to watch A Mighty Wind, but I enjoyed this one as well. Not nearly as much as Best in Show, but I did have a lot of fun with it. The cast was great humor. Love the mockumentary style, just like Best in Show. Overall, I give this one a 4 out of 5. Next up from 1972, I checked out Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key. I had to look at that title, make sure I didn't say it wrong. This is another film directed by Sergio Martino, another one that I really enjoyed. I love his directing style. He makes some great giallo films, and this one is no exception. I don't think it's quite as memorable as some of his other films, like Torso or The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, but I did enjoy it. I give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next up from 1985, I watched My Science Project. This is a recent pickup from Kino. I thought this one was just okay. It wasn't quite as fun as I thought it was going to be. Again, I love 80s films. It was pretty cheesy. The story dragged on a little bit, didn't seem like it really knew where it was going at certain points, but overall I had fun with it. I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. Next up from 1984, I checked out Silent Madness. I did not watch the 3D version, but I did still have fun with this one. It's not a super memorable slasher, but I enjoyed myself the entire time I watched it. Overall, I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5. And you gotta love that beautiful slipcover from Vinegar Syndrome. Can't say it enough. Next up from 1991, I checked out Defending Your Life. This is the recently released Criterion edition. This film is directed by Albert Brooks and stars him as well, and Meryl Streep is also in it. I've never seen a film directed by Albert Brooks, so I didn't really know what to expect, but I have to say I really love this film. Such a unique take on the afterlife, and a really unique perspective as to what it could be like, and I really appreciated that about this film. Great performances, really funny humor. Overall, I loved this film, and it made me want to check out Albert Brooks' other films right away. This one I give 4.5 out of 5. Loved it. Next up from 1987, I finally checked out Mel Brooks' Spaceballs. I had never seen this one before. I actually really do like Mel Brooks. I like his style of humor. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I know it's blasphemous to say. I do like Star Wars, but I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so I maybe didn't appreciate some of the humor as much as I should have. But overall, I had fun with this one. Not sure how often I'll rewatch it, but I would probably give this a 3.5 out of 5. And the 4K looked great. So like I mentioned, after watching Defending Your Life, I had to check out another Albert Brooks film, and I just happened to have this one in my collection already, and that is 1985's Lost in America. This is another release from Criterion. I actually just picked this one up maybe like a month or two ago. This stars Albert Brooks and Julie Haggerty. I hadn't ever seen her in something so young, so it's really fun to see her in this. Just like Defending Your Life, I really connected with this film, really enjoyed it, and just had a great time with it. Overall, I give this a 4.5 out of 5, and I definitely need to see Albert Brooks's other films. So let me know which one I should watch next. Next up, from 1968, I checked out Barbarella. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I've been trying to watch more Jane Fonda, and Andrew loves sci-fi adventure type films. So when he heard I was watching Jane Fonda films, of course, he had to take the opportunity to get me to watch this one. This is a very wacky film, definitely of its time, definitely a 60s type film. That said, I definitely had fun with it. I don't know that I was entirely in the right mood to watch it, but I did enjoy it. Overall, I give it 3 out of 5. Next up, from 1983, I checked out Spasms. This is a release from Code Red. This film stars Peter Fonda and Oliver Reed, two great actors that I really do enjoy watching. And this was overall just a really fun creature feature. You know, a giant snake attacking people and hunting them down will never not be entertaining. And I definitely enjoyed this one. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. And I really like that artwork. It's awesome. And some cool art on the back as well. And I'm sure, like many of you, I completed watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier this month. Overall, I did not love this series. It had some good moments, but it definitely wasn't memorable. It felt like pretty low tier Marvel in my opinion. Won't say too much about it other than I probably give it about a 3 out of 5. Huge disappointment after WandaVision. Next up, from 1941, I finally watched for the first time Citizen Kane. This is the digibook release. I've had this about since I started collecting Blu-rays, so I've had it for quite a while. And this is just a film that it's kind of been a daunting watch, to be honest. I watched this the morning of the Oscars, and so of course I also watched Mink, directed by David Fincher, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a second, but just wanted to let you know I had that double feature. Now, first of all, I have to say I'm not sure that I was fully in the right mood or state of mind to watch this film. I was kind of tired, you know, it was Sunday morning leading up to the Oscars, but I really wanted to watch Mink, and I didn't think I would fully appreciate Mink if I had never seen Citizen Kane, which I was correct about. I definitely can see how groundbreaking this film was and how much it probably changed film back in the day, but I didn't connect with it as much as I was hoping to. I know that's probably blasphemous to say, but I didn't totally love this film. Overall, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. I'm not sure when I'll revisit it, but I definitely need to be in the right mood for it. Then, like I mentioned, I watched 2020's Mink. David Fincher is one of my favorite directors, but for some reason I have just not been excited to watch this film, probably partially because I had never seen Citizen Kane, but overall I just was not excited to watch this one, and again, I was not in the right mood to watch this, and I did not connect with this hardly at all. This is easily my least favorite Fincher film, and yes, I have seen Alien 3. I like the director's cut. Whatever, call me crazy. Overall, on first watch, I'd probably give this 3.5 out of 5, mostly for Gary Oldman's performance. He's very good in this. Just didn't love it. Didn't really connect with it. Let me know what you guys thought about Mink. Another awesome thing that I participated in on Instagram this month is Hammer Horror Week. Always like to take the opportunity to watch more Hammer horror, and Andrew's also a big fan of Hammer horror, so we were very excited about this. The first film we watched from 1959 is The Hound of the Baskervilles. This is the Twilight Time release. Like many Hammer horror films, this stars Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I love Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, and this was a really interesting take on Sherlock Holmes. It's a little slower paced than I would have liked, but definitely did enjoy this. I give it 3.5 out of 5. Next up, from 2021, we checked out Mortal Kombat on HBO Max. I was not excited for this film. I never really played Mortal Kombat growing up, and this is not my favorite genre of film. I will say though that the gore and the kills were pretty much top notch. They were really awesome looking. This film was much longer than it needed to be. I don't know, maybe it just needed to be like a 20-minute short for me to really be happy with it. Overall, I thought it was okay. I'd probably give it 2.5 out of 5. Andrew definitely enjoyed it more than me, so we'll probably pick it up on 4K, but yeah, yeah, definitely didn't love this one. Next up from 1986, I checked out At Close Range. This is the Imprint Films release from Australia. This stars Sean Penn and Christopher Walken. This film looked like it would be right up my alley, and I was definitely correct. Really enjoyed the vibe and the atmosphere of this film. It had a really cool, like, moody score, which I actually found out is a Madonna song at the end of the film, which it runs in its entirety over the credits, which is really cool. I love films with this kind of atmosphere and vibe. I can't even fully explain it, but if you guys have some other recommendations of films similar to this one, definitely let me know, because I loved this one. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Next up from 1969, I checked out Funeral Parade of Roses. This is a film I've heard some really good things about, and I just recently picked up this BFI release. First of all, I have to say this was a fantastic film. It was very gripping and engaging from beginning to end. I like the different styles of storytelling that were present throughout the film, but I will say I did get a little bit confused at times. I think I need to sit down and watch it again to fully appreciate it and to fully understand the story. I don't know if anyone else felt that way on first watch of this one, but definitely did enjoy it. It's a very powerful and important film, one that's worth watching at least once in my opinion. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Next up for Hammer Horror Week, we watched 1959's The Mummy. I don't own an individual release of it, but we have it in this Horror Classics box set. And there's The Mummy up there up top. I'd never seen this version of The Mummy before. Always do enjoy the Mummy tale, and this one was no exception. It was very, very enjoyable. Great performances, really cool effects. Overall, really enjoyed it. I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. This next one was probably my favorite Hammer watch of the whole month, and it came out in 1957, and that is The Curse of Frankenstein. I talked about this briefly in my Warner Archive haul, but I really, really enjoyed this film. This one stars Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee, of course, plays Frankenstein's monster. Just great performances, really engaging story, a really cool take on Frankenstein. Really loved it. I give it 4 out of 5. One of my absolute favorite Hammer horror films that I've seen. Just really love this one. Next up from 1964, we checked out The Gorgon. I don't own an individual release of this one. I have this Hammer Films double feature there. But I really enjoyed this film as well. It's a little slower paced than I would have liked. I mean, all of these Hammer films are kind of paced differently than a lot of like modern horror, but this one was a little bit slower paced than I would have liked, but overall definitely did enjoy it. I give it 3.5 out of 5. Next up from 1969, I finally checked out Easy Rider. This is the Criterion release out of the America Lost and Found set that's up there behind me somewhere. But this is a film that I wanted to see for many, many years, and I'm really happy I finally checked it out. This, of course, is directed by Dennis Hopper and stars Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. You got Jack Nicholson in it as well. Really, really loved this film. Honestly, watching Lost in America kind of put it back on my radar and pushed it up towards the top of my watch list, which if you've seen Lost in America, you know why. But yeah, this is a fantastic road film with fantastic performances. I just loved everything about it. Overall, I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Loved Easy Rider. Next up from 1968, I checked out The Devil Rides Out. Like I mentioned earlier, I really like demonic devil worship films, and this was a really interesting one, and I was really kind of surprised that this came out in the 60s because it kind of had more of like a 70s type feel to it, but overall really enjoyed this one as well. Another great Hammer watch. I give this a 4 out of 5. Definitely one of my favorite watches from the week. Then from 1962, I checked out The Phantom of the Opera. I really, really love The Phantom of the Opera story. I like the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. I like everything about Phantom of the Opera, to be honest, and I was very excited to check this one out. I don't think I've seen a Phantom of the Opera adaptation that I've disliked, and while this one wasn't great, I definitely did enjoy it. I liked the mask. The Phantom was very creepy, and he had a very tragic backstory, so you could kind of commiserate with him a little bit more than some of the other Phantoms I've seen. Overall, I give this a 3.5 out of 5. And then the last watch of the month from 1963 was Kiss of the Vampire. Full disclosure, when I watched this one, I was really, really tired. I had had a very long week at work, so I don't think I paid quite enough attention to it, but of what I saw, I really, really loved it. It was a very interesting vampire story, one of the few Hammer vampire tales that doesn't have to do with Dracula, and I think I really appreciated that about it, and it had some cool effects, great performances. Again, I need to watch this when I'm a little bit more awake, but I would give this a 4 out of 5. So yeah, a great month of watches, some really cool stuff in there. Lots of horror from the 60s and 70s, which I'm really happy about, really excited about. Watched a lot of label titles, knocked a lot of cool things off my watch list. Overall, just a great month Loved a lot of what I watched. I, of course, gave one film 5 out of 5, so that has to be my favorite watch of the month, and that would be The Last Temptation of Christ. And no surprise here, my least favorite watch of the month would be Mortal Kombat. But overall, really enjoyed the month of April, watched a lot of great stuff, got 52 first-time watches in, which is a little bit less than I was hoping for. Trying to watch it, on average 2 a day. So that would come to about like 60 first-time watches in a month, but it's okay. Overall, I really did enjoy what I watched. Please comment down below with your favorite and least favorite watches of April. Did you have any really cool discoveries? Please share them with me. If you have any thoughts on the films I watched or some recommendations for me, I'd love to hear that as well. Huge shout out to our executive producer, Patron Chase Wilson, and a big thank you to him again for sending me Network. That was awesome of him. If you guys are interested in becoming a patron, definitely check out the link in our description. We also have a few other ways you could support our channel if you feel so inclined. But as always, we just appreciate you guys being here. You guys are awesome. Again, let me know how you guys would like me to format this video in the future. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, hit the notification bell to hear when we upload new videos. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you on the next one.